Hey, Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Method people, I just made a lesson that is a full hour and a half long on this subject, so I'm going to try to do today something here that is a little shorter so I can pull some people in and then offer the full lesson uh, in a link below. So, look at today to understand anything on my channel, and also 99% of everything you're hearing everybody else talk about on their guitar channels. If you're on a lesson and it's like, oh, here we go talking about the flat six again, and he said the third, and I don't, what the hell is a third? Just give me the sound, give me some tab, dude. You know, that's gonna really hold you back, not knowing the basic 12-bit language of music. Now, it's multi-dimensional. The language of music also involves the notes, notes in between the notes and their names and stuff like that. On top of this numerical, a couple different numerical ideas that give you the Nashville numbers and stuff like that. But intervals are going to be like the basic communication of harmony. If you're going to try to understand, it just sounds, well, I remember in the beginning, well, I'll learn that later. It's for chords and stuff. I kind of know my chords anyways. I can get by without it. And that's sort of true. But when it comes to soloing, and then you're hearing every time someone tries to explain these concepts, they're like, well, if you play the six along with and you say, what? This has a sharp four, and this Lydian and this Dorian, and all those things are all about these intervals. So if you don't understand this little bit here, everything just gets like, what are they talking about again? But it gets so understandable once you get into this. So let's go as fast as we can here through each line here, and you'll have a detailed hour-long lesson that goes through step by step. So there's only 12 notes. Cool. Every bit of harmony has a tonal gravity center. So this is where all intervals start. You decide on a tonal gravity center, which allows it to be any note, anywhere. From that note, harmony develops. So harmony develops, these intervals develop from these tonal gravity centers. So today's tonal gravity center, we're going to make C. All right, so now we've got from C, we've got some basic numbers here. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and some kind of weird jumble here. Well, let me show you where that came from first. When we go down here, especially we can see this on a piano, and that's why almost everything described when it comes to learning guitar and learning intervals is in the key of C, because, well, this piano keyboard layout, the white keys are laid out to the key of C. So you can see that there's a special kind of code here that will only line up with all the white keys in starting from C. If you start from a different note, you grab one of these black keys or more. You can see why, because there's a lopsided code here. We basically jump a note. We'll give that a name in a little bit. We jump a note, we don't jump, we just go a little, what we call a half step here. Full step, full step, full step, half step. So there's 4, you see there's 3 in between notes here and 2 in between notes. That creates this imbalance that gives us this do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do that sounds pleasing and is also special because of that way it creates a pull. That creates a sonic movement, a sonic pull. So that is what's the kind of the behind the scenes propellant to all this musical motion that you hear all the time. The music is moving along with the rhythm in most cases, unless you're playing at modal music. Hey, you guys keep asking about what's modes, man. Well, do you want to play for a half hour over one chord? And you learn modes. But anyways, let's not talk tangent about that. So we got C, D, E, F, G, A, B in this stepwise. So each one of those was given a number, 1 through 7, to divide up the scale. Provides us with a nice bunch of steps to get through. Now, what that does is, since our tonal gravity in any given situation is going to remain gravity, when we give it 2, we get a choice. It becomes, from this, since this like becomes the expected standard of Western music. This 1, this is the 2, this is the, this harmonic, most natural sounding 3, the most, natural, relaxed, normal to us now, 4 and 5, and so on. So what gives us a choice when we want to lower that? We've now taken this chord or note or tone that we've labeled as 2, and we can do something with that. We could make a choice in our scale to lower that. So then that becomes a group. There's a 2 and the flatted 2. We go up to the E, C, D, E. That's going to be the 3, the third note in our scale. We could also go C minor by flattening that note. So it's a way to organize what sound does. So like, we're going to call this one our 4, because in most cases, if we want to make a change to the 4 in our little good note, bad note group area here, or choice box here, we won't even say they're good or bad. They're just our choice box here. We can go normal, or we can raise the 4, right? But I might be keeping the 4, and we're going to get to this in a second, but you can see where it creates these little zones of 2 notes that are working like as a choice. So you want to see these as choice boxes. The 2, yeah, that's the 2, but the 2 has a choice, and that's where that flat this, flat that, sharp this, sharp that, that's where all this comes from. Those are your alternates to the standard choice. So that being said, moving down from there, what we were just going through or going over then is that if I move, we get to these ones here, and we've got this weird listing here. It's kind of small, so I'll read it out to you. Sharp 4, flat 5th. Sharp 5th, flat 6. Well, it's the same note, so which is it? Why not just call them 1 and forget about it? I'm going to tell you why in a second. But before I do, remember the B. You say, why is it B2? What are we talking about? Well, that looks like the flat symbol in music, so I just use a letter key on the keyboard, B, to be quick. Yes, I could, in symbols and Excel here, I could find that actual musical symbol, but I don't do that. It's a little cumbersome. So I just use the B for flat, so now you understand. So we have the flat 2, the 2, the flat 3, the 3. Let's say we built our scale with one of these 2s, one of these 3s. It doesn't matter which one. For our example here, we've got, we were going to play this 4, but we just like this raised 4th instead. And then I'm keeping the 5 and the 6 in one of my 7s. So what I've done here, and especially since I want to preserve a numerical order so I can have an ease in explaining this to other people, other musicians, and explain what they're hearing, why it sounds different than a major scale by 1 note, is I've raised the 4. Now, new people will fall off the wagon right there and say, oh, but you just changed 1 my computer had a glitch there. So they'll say, oh, you've just changed 1 note. So what is that? That's, I want to play music that has all these grandly different wild scales. But that 1 note change, you'll learn if you haven't already, is like a big difference. Just changing 1 note of a scale can change the mood. When you hear about these modes, these are scales that have 1 note changed. And so it's it's definitely important. It has an importance. If it sounds like it's just something you wouldn't even hear, you won't even hear it when you're new. But if you compose with these ideas, this stuff blossoms. The sound blossoms out. You can make it happen as a composer and take advantage of these little changes. So just 1 note can be very important, is the point here. So we've got a sharp 4 there and a 5. Cool. Now, just as a side thing here, there's an idea associated with that. And the neat thing is there's really an idea associated with all of these choices, like a genre or a sound or a mode or something. And you'll learn that. That's why some of these choices will sound like they do, and will give you a certain flavor, but that same note sometimes sounds like a wrong note if you don't play it right, or you're really not playing it with the rhythm in that case. And it's because these choices actually have like harmonic information. So if I chose this sharp 4, I'm actually making a sound that has a name, and that name you're going to commonly associate it when you see that sharp 4. If you're like, oh yeah, some way down the road, you're like, yeah, it is always somebody mentioning Lydian. Well, you'll learn, you'll thank me later, you'll just kind of know that correlation, but it's not important to know, but these are common things that you'll, as you study the stuff and work through music, once you understand this stuff, you want to work with music and ramp up your understandings of things, you'll see that, you'll hear that all the time. So then I can also keep a 4 where it is, and then I get to this 5, but I want to lower it, or I want to raise it. I've got the choice. The 5 is just so strong in the music, and so together with the root sonically, like a shell in a chord. We're going to talk about that. That you could lower the 5 or raise the 5. Your choice as a composer, and they'll have a sound. Learn what they sound like. Oh yeah, there's the 5, and there's that lower the 5 for the Batman sound. Or maybe I'm making a chord and I want to kind of add a new sound to it. There's that sharp 4. I'm sorry, well, there's that sharp 5. Okay, and then you usually have a normal 6 from there. So now the final choice here with this, well, where does the flat 6 come in? Then I've kept the 4. I've chosen one of my 5s here. Doesn't matter which one I choose, but I've got one of them chosen in this particular scale. And then for the 6th note of these steps, perhaps it's a 6-note hexagonal scale or hexatonic scale, but whatever the case, maybe I've chosen a 7 to make it a 7-note scale, but the 6 I've chosen is lowered. It's a flatted 6, right? And a little later on, there's a chordal thing where I'll talk about this double flatted 7. So you'll know like where you might see it, but if I've chosen a scale, I've got this 6 here or something, or somehow I've gotten 6 notes total and I'm not choosing one of these 7s, but I'm playing this 6 here as the 7, it would be a double flatted 7. All right, but more importantly than that, oh yeah, we talked about B is flat, and by the way, the hashtag is sharp. I'm sure you guys got that by now. Learn the name of your steps along with these intervals. So, for example, you might hear like you're learning about the Phrygian scale, and normally a minor scale has a root and a 2. Well, a Phrygian scale lowers that, so someone might say, "Oh, you put the flat 2nd in that scale." What? Means this, the flat 2nd instead of the. But they might also say, now you're playing that flat 2nd in the scale. But they've described it as, just put a half step in there. It's right after the root. You play a half step. Oh, okay. Then the flat 3rd. Oh, okay. So, half step. Half step occurs in different parts of the scale we saw there. You heard me call them that earlier when I wanted to describe this. It was easier for them to me, instead of me saying, well, it's a half step movement, it's a full step movement, I can just say it's a half step, it's a whole step. But then there's no more step explanations. That's because when melodies move, your most congruent or easiest sounding bits of melody movement are going to be in half steps and whole step, stepwise motion. A lot of what you hear is in stepwise motion, but then we get pentatonic and there's some leaps. That's about as big as steps go, even though you're going to start calling this one a leap, because once you get into the thirds, it's like you're arpeggiating. You've gone root, flat, 3rd, you're arpeggiating a minor chord. We'll get into chordal stuff in the next bit here. But you've got leaps, And you know what? I'm just thinking, like, I'm going to call this the lesson. I said earlier that this was going to be part of an hour long lesson. I like the pace I'm taking here. I'm just going to, so you won't find a longer lesson. Maybe I'll upload it. I don't know. But I'm basically covering the same thing a little faster here. So if you don't see a longer lesson, this might be what I made here. Okay, so leaps are they leave a choice as soon as you make the first leap there to a flat third. That's where you're going. If that's the the where that interval is, then that's what you call it. I'm going up a flat third. I'm leaping to a third. No one says I'm leaping. Just I would say tell another musician, no, it's a root and third is what I just played. Major third. Anyways, it leaves you a choice. There's the choice of what? The flat 2 and the 2 right there. So then when you got the third, you're really begging for a choice in there. And then you've got that nice empty middle note there. And so guess what that does? You're hearing a root, tonal gravity, and it's major third. You got that nice, you put that 2 in there, and you got that nice stepwise sound. I can play one of the other ones. Sounds a little off kilter because we're putting 2 3s in there for some reason. Now this one is also a possibility. Sounds Eastern and like a possibility that I might want to compose with. Definitely has its own. Now suddenly, like the mood is totally changed just by that one note. Instead of total difference. So, but that is going to be, since you don't find that pattern in the major scale, you're not really into some new thing no one's discovered yet. Music's been around a long time, and that's called that'd probably be part of the harmonic major or minor. You can find that little bit, I'm sure, in one of them scales. Okay, so it's a little bit about these, whole steps and leaps, but you also want to know, you want to learn how all your intervals sound, so go from a root and a 4. But later, this will come up later when we discover the how intervals lay out on the fretboard. Let me take a quick tangent here. Today's lesson is just the consideration of as they lay out on one string. A newbie may not have considered that. This line of notes on our screen is exactly the description of what's going on a string from open B to 12th fret B, octave to octave, or on our diagram here, C to C. From C to shining C. Alright, so back to the bump and grind here. You want to get used to your, so that's a 4, and you will develop this. It does take a while. It took me a while, but you're maybe faster than me. But now you'll start to be like, okay, when you know that that's a 5th, you play it so much, you'll be like, yeah, you'll just know that sound is a 5th. You'll know that some kind of 7 there, octave. Okay, computer, are you going to work with me here? Now, as soon as I started talking, came back. Anyways, flat 5th sounds like that. Regular 5th sounds like that. Alright, so get used to all those. Now, and your 6s too, by the way, the, here. Those all may have sounded like they have some relationship because I'm playing corresponding 6ths as they appear in a scale. So some are 6, some are flat 6 intervals, but that's how it lays out in a scale, and that's why it gives those kind of a relationship sound with each other. So triad basics. So you're going to have a root and a 5th are going to be your most, the shell of any chord. 3, 5. Why, that's a power chord. Basics of harmony. So there's a whole hour-long diatribe I can go on about the importance of the 5. But we got to move on here. So now I've colorized the symbols here as well. I hope this helps. For tonal gravity, I'm thinking gravity, root. I'm thinking roots of trees. I'm thinking earth tones. So, and it's a brown note. It's going to be the most home. The warmth of that big brown living room that you had in the 1970s, that kind of feeling. So that's why I think R works great for the root. I'm not going to go to a root on a chord, during a solo. I'm going to go to a root with the idea of, I need some kind of finality. I need to sound like a line has come to an end. I need to sound like I've really, maybe I've been really outside and I want to jump into that change and lock in on a beat. I might choose the root, probably would choose a 5 because that's going to be like the second strongest, but not really a giveaway. Because if I'm not fully ending my progression of chords, maybe I don't want to fully be on a root until the very last chord of the measure to really lock in that home feeling. So there's all those considerations, and that's why I color it brown, because it kind of also informs my choice there as I'm imagining which notes to play. I don't totally colorize my imagination when I'm playing on the fretboard, but it's sort of there. Anyways, but I think it helps. The vegetation with it's like got symbiosis with earth. What the 5 goes along with the root, like vegetation does with the earth. Starts turning into something, starts turning into harmony with that 5. Gravity starts turning into harmony with that 5. So the earth starts turning into something with that vegetation, which brings the oxygen to the air, the atmosphere there. What's the atmosphere? Is it sad or happy? There's a difference in the third. Lower, higher. One you can see is generally associated with happy, not so happy idea. So there you get the major and minor. So I can go way deep into here, and I think it's worthwhile to do so. So that's where maybe I will upload the longer lesson. Let's move on from here and just say, what, the next is the sevenths. And the sevenths have a whole lot of information, and this is where I could take this one and start going on to another hour. But let me say we explain that in the full-on lesson. You're going to find out what are all the sevenths, and how about the symbols, and why you'll see some of these intervallic symbols and what they mean. And I explain it all right here, make it very simple, the difference between certain chords and why they might be going with a certain scale, actually, why you don't see them that much. And when you do see that symbol, it'll inform you on what the music is probably doing, different scales you can do. All this is happening because you understand these interval concepts. So, we're basically in this lesson, we learn, we get an idea what are the intervals called, and then what are their functions outside of hearing them. That's your homework to do. But you need to know the explanations, I guess. But the experience is the important one, and that is you playing and hearing these things. And all the stuff you now learn, you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's why this shape of notes sounds good, because, hey, there's that flatted 7, which made me just turn that C chord into a dominant. As an example. Alright, so, the final thing is you're going to see these chords that come up with these other extensions, and we talked earlier about, hey, there's only 12 notes, but here we have a 13, so what's the deal? Do we really have 19 and 24 and 83 notes? No, when you choose a note to add along to your triads, remember a triad is taking up a root, it's taking up a choice of thirds, a 5, and maybe even a 7 here. That really leaves you with these 3 choice boxes here. Remember we told you to call these choice boxes, and when you pull these from a part of the scale that is beyond the root, here's your tonal gravity root, here's your next root. So let's say A. We could say really our chord is between there and there. A guitar gets a little muddy because it's hard to finger all this stuff, and you can sometimes substitute. Let's say my chord has a 13 in it. Well, I might actually use a 6. You say 6, 13, what are you talking about? You can see the correspondence here. A 13 is a 6. It's the same note. However, on a piano, it's real easy to grab it from above the octave. Now you say, well, why don't all of these have extension possibilities? Because your tonal gravity stays your tonal gravity no matter what octave you play. It doesn't really change it doesn't have a sonic effect other than you're playing an octave. Same with the thirds, same with the fifth, because those are fundamentals to your triad. But the notes of the scale choices in between can inform these extension choices. Remember, you've chosen usually one of these sevens before you get to these color tones, but you don't always have to. But anyways, so you can have, if you're playing, you can have a 2 in your chord, or a flat 2. You can have a 13 in your chord. So it's like a 7 with a 13, or with a flat 13, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's the gist of that, and you'll see here it works. Also, it's, there's nothing major to understand here. Your regular 2 is your regular 9s. You say, oh, I heard about a flat 9. That was confusing. No, that was if you were choosing the flat 2, well, the double of that after the octave is the flat 9. And here's another way where do they come up with these numbers? Well, before I tangent on that, let me finish this first tangent here. The 4 is the 11. Now you see the 4 is a choice that's normal, but in our choice box here, we've chosen the lowered tone is the normal tone. So that makes our other choice a sharpened tone. That's why it's a sharp 4 as a choice, or a sharp 11. It's never called a flatted 11 because the 5 is going to be a 5. This is, this is chord colors, harmony colors. So, or extensions is what they'll call them. So it's generally associated, sharp 11 is going to mean your sharp 4. You don't have to confuse it any other way with the flat 5 or anything. That's just not necessary. The same, then this is why I just consider my main thinking is usually 4 sharp 4, flat 6 6. Like, these are my choice boxes. Yeah, I understand certain situations where something's being modified with the 5 and we're calling it a flat 5 or a sharp 5. I just know that enough to know when I reach those instances, but in any other case, I'm just this is my default thought, if you had to default to one or the other. So, and so those are the, you can see here, root 2, you count up to 7, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, that's 7 notes. The 8th note, octave, 8, octave, octagon, right, is 8. So then that logically, if this is an 8, then that logically makes these a choice of 9s. All right, it makes your next note a 9, or you can flat the 9. The 3 is fundamental to the chord, so it stays a 3 no matter where you play it. The 4 is a step in a scale, so it's a color tone, an optional color tone, and then it's up, those technically the 3s would be the 10s. That's why you never hear a chord with an extension of 10. Now you know why, but you will hear an extension of 11s, but you'll hear 2 different 11s. That's why. You'll never hear a 12 as an extension. That's why. That would go with the 5, but you will hear a 13 because now we've passed 12 and gone to the 13th note, and you'll never hear a flat 14 and a regular 14 onto a 15 or whatever the case would be there. We're in unnecessary zone. So that's that. Those are the extensions there, and that's really the highlights of everything extension-wise. Not to be confused with sharps and flats that you have here with notes. but that's, you'll learn to, be able to shift from one talk to the other without any major problems. And maybe perhaps another question is, well, why do some keys have sharps or flats? Well, we can see if we line up the key of D, not the key of C, we would have D, E, and then we know next to E is F. There is no node in between here, or actually it's down here. There's no node in between E and F as a technical, and between B and C, so that creates D, E, F sharp to maintain do, re, mi. The mi is going to be F sharp, a black key. G, A, B, C sharp. So that's where sharps and flats come from, even though the intervals are staying a normal 7. So don't let the sharps and flats of intervals, the note names confuse you as to intervals. That could be like one of the last hang-ups a person new to learning intervals can sometimes get hung up there in confusion. All right, so that does it in our faster way. Maybe ask me in the comments if you want me to turn this into a printable sheet. You'll just have to copy it off yourself, which I think would be a better exercise for you. Thank you for watching. If something was like missing here, there's an hour-long version of this where I just ramble on even deeper about each concept. Maybe something also makes sense in there. If you have time, watch that, or maybe you'll just catch this one, and maybe I might not even upload that one. I don't know. Maybe I'll just wait. I'm going to upload this one and see what questions I get. If you guys ask a lot of questions, I'll just upload the longer version, but maybe you get it from here. So tell me what other things you'd like to see graphed out, any other ideas, any questions you have, challenge me. I definitely like that, and I guess we'll go from there. And please, our situation is not the greatest here in a financial sense here. It's actually more than I can talk about on this channel, more than any of you would ever want to hear. So please, if this meant anything to you and you got something you're willing to throw in that little coffee jar there, the buy me a coffee, the buy me a rush coffee. Come on, everyone wants to buy a rush coffee for someone. So throw something at that link if you can. It would be like not just appreciated, it would be like an emergency the bailing water out of the ship here that's sinking. So think about that. And of course there's merchandise that I always tout on here. There's the tapestries that might look cool for your studio if you search around on my TeePublic site, which should be in the link below if it still works. All right, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, and hope I made this into more of a bite-sized chunk here, 40 minutes or whatever it just took me to do that. Yeah, have a great day. Leave some questions and comments about anything below. Thank you. Bye.